historically has been correct. That white people, what they have been saying throughout history, that black people cannot govern. Black people are backward. They are uncivilizable. The ANC has confirmed it.
It's the end of the year. We're wrapping it up, and we'd like to thank you guys for being a part of the community. It's been about 5 years now. We started just before COVID at the end of 2019. It's our 5th year, and I hope this message encourages and inspires other podcasters out there. I see there's a lot of you guys that have started. We are so proud of you. Even if it's not a podcast, I mean, start a YouTube channel, start a community on YouTube, share your passions, whatever you're passionate about. Use these platforms to build your own community. But it does take time. It needs you to be consistent. It has to be something that you love, you're passionate about. Because in the beginning, you might not have money, but over time, you start seeing, no, these things have got some sort of rewards if you stay the course. So I'm very excited because we're doing another installment. We have promised you. You've been asking me, when is he coming back to give us that masterclass? So when I had a chat with him last week, when I was inviting him to the show, he's like, maybe a masterclass right now, the audience is not ready. It's the end of the year, but people are tired mentally. I'm sure you're also tired. Go have some fun. And then we decided, let's have a political wrap-up conversation. Wrapping it up for 2024, looking into 2025, and then he'll come back again the first quarter of next year to do a political masterclass. Ladies and gents, Mr. Prince Mashele.
Thank you, DJ Spoo. And it's always a pleasure to be with you. And thanks for the invitation.
My pleasure. The last episode that we had went viral. It had a lot of comrades and Grootmans calling me Bankomanya, and that's the thing. Once you decide to get into the space, you must expect those, you know?
Yeah, it went viral because of you, not because of me.
It's because of you. But thank you. I just want to start with your health, because I was telling you at this age, you know, nothing, most things don't matter to me. I was wearing sunglasses earlier today. Somebody was saying, oh, those are nice. I'm like, they're like, what brand is that? They're like, this is a no-name brand. I bought these for 100 rands. Is it like? And I'm like it doesn't matter. I'm wearing a 100 rand t-shirt. Like I don't care about things. I just care about breathing.
True. You see, when you are younger, especially before you turn 40, you tend to have all sorts of crazy ideas in your head about what is important. But once you cross that line, 40, and you go to the other side, you worry about important things. Health. The fact that you woke up in the morning and you are not sick. You are breathing. Nature, mountains, water, that stuff, it's extremely important to begin to value that. I really am appreciative of the fact that I am healthy. I exercise. I try to live a healthy life. And I am happy. I'm content. I have no big troubles. Things I can't change, I accept. Those I can, I do.
Yeah, no, same here. I'm just glad I'm alive. I'm breathing. My kids are fine. And we're getting into 2025. Maybe before we get into our conversation, the previous episode was quite an interesting one. A lot of people have said so many things, and a lot has happened in the political scene. But what I would like to hear from you so far is, are you happy with your life, with how this year went by, and what are some of your plans personally with your life and goals, family for 2025?
Look, by the way, I'm a student of happiness, believe it or not. I am an Epicurean, someone who pursues happiness. That's me. And I have read a lot of books about happiness. I've just finished To Have or To Be. Because when you are younger and you are chasing all of these material things, you think it is important for people to see that you have things. But when you are at my age and you have sorted out your head, you understand that the most important thing is to be. It's just to be yourself. So I am very happy, believe it or not, with all the noises that have been unfolding in our country. There's another book, Ailing Page, silence in the midst of noise. So I'm the kind of person who values silence, just reflection, to be at peace with nature and life. So yes, I'm very, very happy.
And I think another thing that impressed me the last time, which I related with, is that you spend most of your time at in a farm, as opposed to city lights and city living.
Yeah, I used to live in the city. I've lived in Johannesburg. I've lived in Tshwane. I've recently moved over the past 5 years, moved to a small town called Bronkhorstspruit. I live in the countryside. It's peaceful. There's no traffic there. Life is very slow. We don't. People there are not worried about the things that people are worried about in the city. There's no. People are not showing off anything. They just live a quiet, beautiful life. So that's what nourishes my soul.
I hear you. Let's wrap up the year and look back at the year that was. A lot is happening this week. The EFF NPA. I was so blessed to be in the presence of the CIC of the EFF, Mr. Julius Malema, a few weeks ago. We spoke
I watched. It was a great.
It was a great
conversation.
episode. Yeah, it was an incredible episode. I really enjoyed it too. He spoke about the NPA. MK is also turning 1. They are wrapping up the year. Politicians as well, looking into the new year. Maybe let's look back at the year and let's hear some of your opinions.
Look, let's start here. Because we are going through our daily troubles, we actually don't appreciate the historic meaning of what we are going through as a society. 2024 will stand out in history as one of the most important years in the evolution of modern South Africa. It will be posterity that will appreciate the depth of what has happened this year. And when I say history, I mean proper history, not the stuff that is bandied about by shallow commentators. And I'll explain what that means. 2024 brings together 2 historic moments in the life of modern South Africa. One, the first element, it brings into it 1910. People may be shocked, How does 2024 bring 1910? Let me explain to you. It brings 1910. Secondly, it brings 1994, and I'll tell you how it combines the two. In 1910, for the first time in the history of South Africa, the warring enemies, that is the English and the Boers, came together to form a government to govern South Africa. It had never happened before. They had just emerged after the Anglo-Boer War, which ended in 1902. They had killed each other. The Afrikaners were in concentration camps, the Afrikaner women and children. Millions of them died, right? But they came together to form a union government in 1910 to co-govern South Africa. That is huge. How do we see 1910 in 2024? For the first time in the history of South Africa, the enemies, the blacks and the whites, have come together to form a government. That is huge. That's massive in history. So that's 1910, and we can get into detail about it, what it means. Secondly, it brings 1994, because 1994 was different from 1910. So let me tell you, for example, in 1910, there was no ruling party that collapsed. 1910, no. In 1994, there was a ruling party that collapsed, the National Party. And that's how unique 1994 was. So when this ruling party collapsed in 1994, something happened. There are forces in society at the time that jostled to do 2 things. 1, to bury it. 2, to inherit its assets. And these 2 forces, the one was the ANC. It jostled to bury and inherit the National Party's assets. The second one was the DP, the white liberals, also jostled to inherit and bury the National Party. This is what happened, the outcome of that struggle between the DP and the ANC. The ANC was given the body of the National Party. Remember, officially, the National Party dissolved into the ANC. So the ANC was left with the body of the National Party and say, be the custodian of the body. The DP inherited the assets of the National Party. The members of the National Party shifted and went to the DP. And that's how eventually the DA was formed. So what does this tell us about 2024? We are exactly there. There is a ruling party that is dead. It's called the ANC. And there are forces that are jostling for two things. One, burying it. Two, inheriting its assets. Let me tell you who killed the ANC. Jacob Zuma killed the ANC. When history proper is written, Jacob Zuma will be recorded as the murderer who killed the ANC. Finished it.
But the previous episode, you said the current president, Mr. Ramaphosa, will be remembered in history as the person that presided over its funeral.
Exactly. So Jacob Zuma did the murdering. Cyril Ramaphosa did the burying. So Ramaphosa is busy burying it, and he's ensuring that this burial is peaceful. There's no chaos as the ANC is being buried. I mean, the ANC lost an election, right? Noises and so on. Ramaphosa prevailed to make sure that the ANC is buried very nicely and very quietly with dignity. It exits. So the ANC is being buried as we speak.
And before you continue, sorry to disturb you there, to come in there. Are you saying former President Jacob Zuma killed the ANC while he was president of the ANC? Or are you saying he killed it by forming EMK?
It's a very complex question you are asking. He actually stabbed it while he was in the ANC, while he was president. So that whole business of state capture, of allowing thieves from India, the Guptas, to take over the South African state, of murdering state-owned enterprises and milking the state dry, that's what finished off the ANC. But he did a bit of life. And when he was out of it, he realized, I need a hammer just to smash its head so that it dies completely. And he smashed it, and it died completely. And Ramaphosa was handed over the body to bury it. Now, the question is, now that the ANC was buried in 2024, who is going to inherit its assets? Remember, this was the question about the National Party. Who inherits the asset? And the DP got the assets. Who is going to run away with the assets of the ANC? The struggle for the assets of the ANC is on as we speak. And I can tell you who are these. The DA, by the way, they want the ANC's assets. They want to take whatever they can get from the ANC in order for them to become the governing party of South Africa.
What are those assets?
The assets are the voters who have actually installed the ANC in power. The assets are the masses of black people. People are fighting, organizations are fighting to get the votes of the vast majority of South Africans who happen to be black. So even Zuma having murdered the ANC, he now wants its assets. So this whole MK business is about capturing the assets of the ANC. And you can see the way he behaves. He says he wants to maintain the membership of the ANC. Why? In order for him to be viewed as the rightful heir who can take over the assets of the ANC. Two, look at the symbols of the MK. The symbols of the MK, even the name MK comes from the ANC. So he wants that to legitimize his claim to the assets of the ANC. The way they praise Winnie Madikizela Mandela, for example, he is struggling to inherit the assets of the ANC. The EFF also have been, the whole game of the EFF has been about inheriting the assets of the African National Congress and nothing else. So that's how historic 2024 is. It's gonna stand out in history as the year when eventually the behemoth called the ANC was buried and forces fought for its assets.
So you don't think there's any slight chance of the ANC coming back?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Here is the thing about the ANC, and I think I made this point in your previous episode. Once the ANC loses, it doesn't come back. Just look at, don't go far. We're sitting at VETS here in Gauteng. Look at the trajectory of the ANC right here in Gauteng. Has it been going down and up, down and up? No, it's one way, all the way. It's going down. It's never going to go up. Look at Gauteng. Look at the ANC nationally, right? Since it began to decline, has it experienced an upward swing? No. It's one way into the dustbin of history. There is no other way. There are chaps like Panyaza, by the way. Also, he's trying to inherit the assets of the ANC. I mean, Panyaza is onto something big, by the way. He will not succeed, but I can see what he's trying to do. This whole thing of not killing Chris Hani again is about differentiating himself as a leader of the younger generation who must inherit the assets of the ANC. That's what the business is about. So the fight for the assets of the ANC is on. But the ANC is dead and buried. Unlike Jesus Christ, it will not rise from its grave.
Sure. The DA is, I wouldn't call it a small party. It's one of the biggest parties in the country, but its constituency, it's usually Abelungu.
Yes.
And we've heard clips of Ukoko Helen Zille saying, no, Tina, sizozidlalela like boma 20-something, grand. Then the previous episode, you spoke about the EFF. You said it's also now not only declining, you said it's dying. And then now you're saying the ANC is on a downwards trajectory. You're saying it's dead when it's even being mwachwat konamanje. Now, these assets of the ANC that you're talking about, these are majority of all these millions of black people. Where are they going to go? So which party is going to emerge after all, when all of this is happening in the future? What does the future look like?
The question you are raising is very important and complex. And you see, the ANC's death must be mourned, regretted, and celebrated at the same time. Why must it be regretted? And you'll see how I'm answering your question. It must be regretted because historically, the ANC is the only political party in the whole history of South Africa that united black people. And you may take this lightly, by the way. It's hugely important. So a black person in KwaMhlabuya Lingana, in KZN, and a black person in Chidimbini, in Venda, or Zirast in the Northwest, or Nkomati Port in Mpumalanga. What is it that made them to feel that they belong to one thing? Politically, it actually has been the ANC. There is no other party that managed to do that for black people in the history of black people. A political party that made all blacks, it didn't matter where you are, feel that you belong to one thing. Now, when you remove that thing, you are actually leaving political chaos for black people. Going forward, it's going to be extremely difficult for black people to feel and believe that they belong to one thing. As we speak, there is no political party in South Africa, as the ANC, as I said, is dead, that does that. The DA does not make black people feel that they belong to one thing. The EFF does not make black people feel that they belong to one thing. They may be supported by a section of blacks, but not the whole of black society feel that they belong to one thing. The MK, in the main, animates Zulus in KZN. There is an attempt I can see at the level of leadership to bring people like Floyd, Dali, and all of them. But the MK hasn't reached that level that the ANC had reached in terms of legitimacy among black people. So that's why I'm saying the death of the ANC, on the one hand, must be regretted. It's going to take years before something new that can unite black people and white people emerge. Why must it be celebrated? This is the other hand. It must be celebrated because the ANC has committed serious crimes against black people and against South Africans, all South Africans. What are the crimes of the ANC? Let's start with black people. The biggest crime that the ANC has committed against black people is education, public education. If you look at how white people, the English first, and secondly the Afrikaners, how they turned themselves around from conditions of poverty to become middle class and wealthy, education was at the center of that process. They built public schools for their children and made sure that their children received top education. One of the public schools I'm talking about is exactly this place where we are sitting, Wits. Wits was built by the English, supported by the mining industry right here in Johannesburg, to do what? They meant to educate the children of the English. That's why the Afrikaners later, they went next door to build the Rand Afrikaans University to do what? To do exactly what the English had been doing through Wits for their own Afrikaner children. The ANC has collapsed public schools in townships, has collapsed public schools in rural areas. It has actually collapsed universities. The quality of our universities has declined under the ANC. So what has that done? That has expanded the reservoir of black people who are uneducated, who are unemployable, and who are hopeless. So that's the first crime committed by the ANC. So when proper history is written, and by the way, like Churchill, Churchill said history would be kind to himself because he was going to write it himself, and he has written it. I'm going to write this history, so I'm not going to leave it to some amateurish historian. The second failure of the ANC is this: is the failure to add a significant component to the South African economy, a component that would provide work for black people. So again, let's go back to the English. What did they do in South Africa in relation to the economy? They built mines. At the top of those mines, you found the English and the Jews, by the way. They were the owners and the managers of those mines. Below them, the petty bourgeoisie, again, the English and the Jews. That's how the English eventually in South Africa dug themselves as a collective out of poverty. And at the bottom, underground, the people who were doing the hard work, they were dying underground, were blacks. Afrikaners, what did they do? They built parastatals. Your Escoms of this world, your Telcoms of this world, your Escors of this world. To do what? To provide employment to the Afrikaners. So an Afrikaner would be found at a robot begging. He would be picked up by an average middle-class Afrikaner and say, no, you are embarrassing us. You need to go and work. And this chap would be taken to Telkom and be given a job. And a black fellow would be taught that this is your new boss, you must teach him work. So the Afrikaners built parastatals in order to provide employment to their own people. And there was also a component of industry, by the way, financed through the activities of the Bruther Bond. Your Ruperts of this world, by the way, the first Rupert was financed through arrangements involving the Bruther Bond. Now, let's come to the ANC, which is the sin it committed. What is it that the ANC has built that provides employment to black people? That's the question. Oh, look at the previous 30 years. The ANC has built nothing. You know what it has done? It has destroyed the little that the whites had built. You come from Tembisa. You know what I'm talking about. The factories around Isando, the factories around Kempton Park, which used to be bustling manufacturing centers, a lot of them have actually closed down. I come from Mpumalanga. I live in a township called Mukhuhlu. There used to be an industrial site in Mukhuhlu. You want to cry when you see that industrial site today. Nothing is happening there. And what I'm telling you, South Africans know across the country has happened. So the ANC has committed a huge sin. At the same time, it has enriched a few of its cadres. The first band was the band of Sakima Kozo, that group. Bulelani Ngcuka. They are very rich. Are they creating employment for millions of black people? Show me these jobs. So that's the second, and that's economic, the second crime. The last crime that the ANC has committed is to confirm racism, that racism historically has been correct. That white people, what they have been saying throughout history, that black people cannot govern. Black people are backward. They are uncivilizable. The ANC has confirmed it. This stuff, it's heartbreaking. The ANC, for the sins it has committed, must never be forgiven by black people. It is the only party that enjoy the kind of overwhelming support from black people. And what did it do? It squandered our support. It made us to be the laughing stock of white people, but it also made black people to be the laughing stock of the world. The blacks of South Africa were the last hope, by the way, in the world. Historically, black people have been victims of racism. And the theory was simple. Black people are half human. They are not civilizable. They cannot govern themselves. And if you look across the world, by the way, you will struggle to find a country with significant global clout that is governed by black people, that is making technological advancements the way China, for example, has proven whites wrong. Remember, whites in the world have also believed that Chinese people, Japanese people, the yellow peril, can't govern themselves. They are uncivilizable. But the Asians, the Chinese, the first was the Japanese, by the way, turning around from 1868, the Meiji dynasty. They turned themselves around. In 1905, Japan defeated a European power, Russia, 1905, militarily, defeated Russia. And it was celebrated by the rest of Asia. And the Asians realized, actually, whites are not superior. Black people in South Africa, the ANC has said to white people, you have been correct to say we cannot govern ourselves. I was listening to the radio yesterday. The ANC government can't even provide clean linen in a hospital called Chris Hani Baragwanath. Chris Hani must be turning in his grave, by the way, when he sees what is happening in a hospital that is named after. Clean linen. What about building a factory? So those are the sins of the African National Congress as we close this year and we say this has been a historic year.
Sure. You're speaking about it'll take a miracle or many years to come to have this new or a new party that will unite black people. Isn't MK that party?
No. Definitely not.
Because Ubaba does say his plan right now is to unite all black people.
He's dreaming. You see, let's talk in detail about MK. Number one, there is no MK without Zuma. I've said this before. And Zuma is old. He's going to die very soon. It's nature. You get old, you die. You don't get old and become younger. It doesn't work that way. Even I, as I get older, I will die. So Zuma will exit the political scene very soon. The longest he can be around, maybe 10 years, even that, maybe that's generous. So without Zuma, there's no MK. The fellows who are going to remain there are going to fight like, man, the fight is going to be like very, very bitter. So forget about MK. But there are other dynamics that are involved, by the way, I play within MK. And people are not talking about it. Let me tell you. The MK in the main, is not about uniting black people. It's about two things. One is about providing refuge to black scoundrels. People who have either stolen money, people who have committed all manner of skullduggery, people who have lost integrity, people who were at the center of state capture, all of them have flocked in the direction of MK. Those people lost something. One, they've lost state power. They can no longer deploy each other in state-owned enterprises. Two, they have lost legitimacy in public discourse. They know it. Three, they have lost incomes. So the MK solves their problem. They have incomes now. But then there's a second foreign dynamic. And you are going to be surprised. The MK is actually the project of the Russians.
Not Iran.
The Russians. And you may say, but where do you get that from? I'll tell you where I get it from. There's a fellow called Louis Liebenberg. He happens to live in Bronkhorstspruit.
He's been in the news over the past couple of weeks,
yeah. He has confirmed it. That one, he used to be a funder of the MK. And he has confirmed it that Putin took over from him to fund MK. If you think I am talking lies, I'll send you a clip. I've seen him saying it. He thought was speaking in a private, closed, behind-the-scenes room. But the clip has circulated. It has landed on my phone. The guy confirming that Putin funds MK. What does Putin want? Putin is not Father Christmas. He's not going to take Russian money and pump it into a South African project just for generosity. No. It doesn't work that way. There is something that he wants. You see, South Africa historically has been viewed as an asset for foreign powers. For the longest time, it was under the control of the West. So our gold, there was a gold standard in the world. We used to fuel that. South Africa, at some point, was the largest gold producer. But our gold was not stored in South Africa. It was actually in vaults in London. And there was an arrangement between the Americans and the British in terms of keeping the gold in London. So South Africa was an asset for the West for the longest time. When the Soviet Union supported the ANC during the liberation struggle, they had hoped that once the ANC takes over, they would actually snatch South Africa from the Westerners. By the way, if you think this is far-fetched, go and read a book by Marcus Wolf. I've just finished reading it. It's a book that came out in 1997. This chap was the spy chief in East Germany. He actually reveals many things in terms of what the Soviet Union were planning and everything else. The title of the book is A Man Without a Face. You will learn a lot. So Putin hasn't given up the hope that South Africa could be snatched. So South Africa now is actually being, the forces that are fighting for South Africa in the main are three outside South Africa. The Chinese, they want South Africa badly because we have strategic minerals here. The West, even though the West is in tatters now, and the West it brings together Western Europe, America, and you can include New Zealand and Australia in that grouping. But that grouping actually is in tatters now. And we can talk about that. But they still, by the way, have huge interest in South Africa. They cannot afford to let this country being snatched by the Russians. And then the third force is Russia, Putin. He wants it badly. So the MK, Putin sees it as an instrument through which he can actually gain control over South Africa. Now, there are fellows who are running around wearing green t-shirts, calling themselves Gwazam Control. They have no clue what they're running around doing. There are forces who are looking at them as idiots who can be used in a strategic game that ultimately involves controlling this beautiful and rich land we call South Africa.
So when I mentioned Iran earlier, I made a mistake to align it with MK because I saw an interview of Mr. Rob Hersov when he spoke about the ANC being funded by Iran through MTN. Now, I know it's not a topic I wanted to get into, but maybe your knowledge as far as that's concerned, how true is that?
Well, remember, Iran is a strategic ally of Russia in the bigger global scheme. So Iran would be very happy to control a portion of South Africa. But even if they were to succeed, they would do that in coordination with their bigger brother, who is Russia. And you see, this is how the Soviet Union operated, and I want you to see how Iran links up with Russia. The Soviet Union, actually, that's where the headquarters of global communism was. The rest were satellites. East Germany were satellites. Iran is actually a satellite of Russia in the bigger scheme of things, because the strategic capacity that Russia has, Iran doesn't have. So Iran cannot control big things. It can control it if it's in coordination with Russia. But I don't know what Rob Herzog, what information he has. But it's not far-fetched that Iran would want to control a portion of South Africa. But that would be in coordination with Russia.
Donald Trump just tweeted a few weeks ago that if we continue with a BRICS currency, he's going to increase the tariffs all the way to about 100%. And I think our responses as South Africans, we said there hasn't been those types of talks. BRICS has been a platform for us to all trade in our own local currencies as the countries that are a part of BRICS. Your opinions around Donald Trump's tweet that made headlines all over the world?
By the way, Donald Trump doesn't have a sophisticated mind. I mean, people who follow him would know that. This chap is just a street fellow who happened to make money. When it comes to striking money deals, he's good at it. But in terms of strategic thinking, Donald Trump is not in that league. But I can tell you, there are serious brains behind that announcement in the US. Don't take that lightly. You see, the world historically has been a game of empires succeeding each other. So one empire is in charge of the world, and at some point that empire collapses, another takes over. Go and read Carol Quigley, The Anglo-American Establishment. You will struggle to find that book because there are forces that don't want that book to be read. But you will understand how these empires plot to run the world. So, after the Second World War, America took over from Great Britain as the empire running the world. And that empire, which is America, is almost on its knees now. The empire that is rising and almost taking over, if you study carefully all the indicators of global power, you will see that China is almost neck and neck with the US. It's taking over. I was watching CNN actually 2 days ago. I saw a fellow, by the way, coming from Trump's quarters, making a startling admission that China has more naval warships than America today. So in terms of, if there were to be a war for controlling the seas, the oceans of the world, China would win it in terms of its military, in terms of its naval capacity. So, Donald Trump, the people who are behind Donald Trump understand that China is rising and wants to take over. So what's their response? Undermine China. That's their response. This whole thing about the currency that is used to trade in the world, that decision is about undermining China. Because you see, when you control the currency that the world uses to trade, you control the flow of goods, in the world. You actually control the world economy. You can decide to switch off a country, like the Americans have switched off Russia and said, sanctions, Putin, you are not going to trade with us, but you're also not going to use our currency to trade. That has created very serious complications for Russia. So that's what the guys who are behind Trump are about. South Africa is just a small player. I mean, if you look at our trade with the US, I mean, there's the only loss would make really from if Trump were to implement what he's talking about is the AGOA arrangement. If you remove the AGOA arrangement, what is it that we send to the US? Absolutely nothing in terms of numbers.
How big would that impact be, though?
It would be big in the sense that whatever jobs that are created through the products that we are sending to the US. I mean, for example, the automotive industry in South Africa. If you look at, I was looking at the numbers the other day, Volkswagen, for example, right? It sends more cars outside than the cars it sells in South Africa. So in other words, if the US were to say, we are going to raise tariffs by 100% for all the goods that are coming from South Africa under AGOA, a company like Volkswagen, for example, would have serious troubles. We have serious troubles because it sells more cars outside South Africa than the ones it sells internally. It's just a small example. So jobs will be affected in South Africa. But in terms of the bigger game, we are a very small player. But because of our strategic position in Africa, these big powers want us. So when they are fighting, somehow we get involved. So this whole BRICS thing, that's how we get involved. Actually, the real powers are the US and China here. It's not us and the Americans.
And why are they so interested in us? Is it because we are, or they see us as some sort of a gateway to the rest of the continent of Africa, which is pretty much the youngest, but the youngest continent in the world and pretty much the future of the world, and with all of our minerals.
Here is the strategic worth of South Africa.
Yeah.
One, our geographic location.
Yeah.
People may not understand. If you are planning a strategy to control the world, the military will be at the center of that strategy. The economy and so on also will be at the center of that strategy. Now, say you want to move a submarine from the US to, say, the Far East. You've got two ways of moving your submarine. One, you can move it through the Suez Canal, which is in the main controlled by Egypt. And at some point during the wars in the 60s, there were problems. The Egypt would just block that channel. So if you want to move a ship from the US to the Far East, you would have to come via South Africa. That's how in the first place, white people got to settle in South Africa. They were not coming to South Africa, these people. They were actually going to India, the Dutch East India Company. But then they couldn't go through the Suez Canal. They had to go round. So Cape Town was what? Was actually a fueling station. So South Africa is strategic in terms of its geographic location, the movement of ships. South Africa is key. So he who controls South Africa controls the movement of ships. That's the first strategic value of the country. The second is our minerals. You see, we don't beneficiate our minerals. It's stuff beneath our soil. We dig it up. Where does it go?
Back to them.
It goes to them.
And then it gets back sold to us more expensive.
Exactly. It goes to them. They want to control the stuff that is beneath our soil.
And the rest of the continent.
Exactly. Yeah, they want to control it. That's why South Africa is strategic to them. The third is political. South Africa is the most influential country politically on the continent. Now, if you control South Africa and the regime that is running South Africa is aligned to you, then you can even say, if you are Russia, South Africa, talk to countries in Africa. When they come to the General Assembly at the UN, this is how they must vote on this issue. You can instruct someone at the union buildings if you control that someone. So if you were to have an MK, for example, controlling the union building, Putin will just pick up a call and say, fellows, remember, you are sitting there in the union buildings because I gave you money. If I didn't give you money, you wouldn't be sitting there. So I'm telling you, there's General Assembly. There's an issue concerning our strategic interests. This is how we're going to vote. So there is a strategic game behind all of what we are seeing. And we must understand. Because if we don't understand, we'll run around like these chaps who are wearing blue t-shirts, calling themselves Gwaza Mkonto. They have no idea what...
Green.
Green, yeah, sorry, green.
Blue's DA.
Yeah, blue. Oh, sorry. My apologies to Ubaba Zuma. Green. Yeah, running around, have no idea of the strategic game that is being played. They're just pawns being pushed around by big players.
Middle East. Israel has started entering Lebanon. They're bombing Beirut now. Syria has just changed. There's a new regime there. What is the main goal of Israel? The warrant of arrest came out for Mr. Netanyahu, and people have been saying his interest is for the war to keep on lasting longer so that he stays longer in power. What is their main goal? And obviously when I say their main goal, I'm talking about America as its alliances.
Look, here's the
its
thing.
biggest alliance.
Here's the thing. Israel as a state was created by the Americans.
Yeah.
And they have decided where to locate the state. By the way, people don't know this. The first option was to locate Israel in Africa. That was the first option. That let's find a place in Africa. And the Americans, by the way, had experimented with that game. I mean, you would think I'm smoking. A country called Liberia was created by the Americans after the freeing of slaves. And they said, okay, let's find a place in Africa where those who want to go back, they can go. Liberia was born. Israel, the Americans said, where? The first consideration was Africa. But then they said, no, culturally, there would be a misfit. Historically, you can't even explain it. And I went to the Bible and all sorts of texts and said, but actually, originally, the Jews come from that part of the world, the Middle East. And they decided, we are going to locate them right there. Now, when they decided to locate them there, they said, we know that neighborhood is going to be hostile to this new state called Israel that we are creating. But we are going to back up this state no matter what. We are going to give it military support, industrial support, anything that will make it to survive, we will provide as the Americans. So it doesn't matter who is leading America. They will not deviate from that script. So what is the main goal? The main goal is to make sure that Israel as a state survives, exists without being harmed by its hostile neighborhood. So that's a strategic goal. What are the tactics? The tactics are, if there is never allow any state very close to Israel to be militarily powerful, that it can harm Israel. So weaken them all. Then they identified which states are these that are hostile to Israel. Iran is one of them. That's why the noise about Iran. have to weaken any state in that neighborhood, especially a state that is hostile and it supports the Palestinians. If it supports the Palestinians and it's hostile, weaken it. So what you see there, it's all about that. Secure Israel, weaken all its hostile neighbors. That's the game that is being played there. Even if it means annihilating Palestinians, like killing them like flies. I mean, what is happening there? I mean, what is happening there? It's Buipatong on steroids. Remember how black people were killed in Buipatong? So Netanyahu and them have decided we are going to multiply Buipatong in Palestine and just murder them. That's what is happening there. And the Americans have stuck to their script. We will back you up no matter what.
So that is obviously through APEC, right? APEC that funds and lobbies politicians to keep on supporting Israel.
APEC in the main is oil. It's not involved in that game. It's not involved in that game.
Isn't APEC an Israel movement that lobbies
sorry. You said
American
APEC.
politicians?
I made a mistake.
And gives them money.
I thought you said OPEC. Sorry.
No, APEC. AIPAC. And that lobbies them and gives them money. And even those that are not in leadership, they'll give you money if you're supporting their interests. And when you do get into leadership, you toe the line.
Yes. So what they've done, they have set up all manner of covert and overt organizations to make sure that this strategic mission is carried out.
Because you do hear most American citizens, you'll find that they're not happy.
Yeah, they're not happy.
Protests, all of that, but it's like it's just this movement that keeps on going on, and it keeps on making sure whoever is in leadership toes the line.
Yeah, but they have understood. You know how the Jews did it. They're very smart, the Jews, and I've been reading their history. After what happened to them in the Holocaust and all of that stuff, and the Holocaust was actually the latest. I mean, the Jews have been subjected to all manner of pogroms in history in Europe. They've identified levers of power in the world, not only in the US, but in the world, levers of power in the world. One, knowledge. If you sit back and you look at the knowledge industry in the US, I dare say in the world, you will be surprised how Jewish dominated the knowledge industries. So, the knowledge industry in the US have captured it. It doesn't matter what the masses in the US say, but knowledge moves the world. Captured that. Secondly, they have understood that American politics has an elitist core. And there are feeder institutions, educational institutions in the US, the Ivy League. So if you capture that system, you will capture and control political power in the US. They've done that. Doesn't matter what some chap in Harlem thinks. But the elite, the elitist establishment in Washington, that has been captured. Netanyahu knows this. That's why he's not worried about the so-called warrant of arrest. First country to say, no, we don't agree with this, we're not going, was the US. Because he knows the US is still the leading Western power. So if you have the support of the US, you are generally safe. So that's what has happened. So the Israelis know that they've got a trusted partner in the US. They control the US institutionally. They don't care about the noises that are being made, but institutionally they control the US. They are assured of the support of the Americans.
Do you think they have got anything to do with this conversation that is growing in South Africa of the Cape independence? Or what does this Cape independence idea come from?
Yeah, this, by the way, is a very interesting question you're asking. This Cape independence, and Rob Hertzog, by the way, has been behind it. One of the people behind it. He knows it. The idea is this. The idea has been for the elite of the white population. Now that we are handing over power to blacks, that was in 1994. Remember, before white people handed over power, they did scenario planning. That's what most people don't know. They think, these white people just handed over power and folded their arms and say, we shall see. No. There was scenario planning. Do you want to read one of the books that will reveal a bit? Go and read a book by Gerald Lude, The Communistization of the ANC. You will find some of the scenarios there. Chap was one of the top spies at the time. One of the things, by the way, that the planners were toying with before they handed over power was that let's give these blacks power. In 25 years' time, we are going to be the majority in South Africa, we whites. It sounds like a mad idea. You know, what was the calculus? They said they are going to be wiped out by HIV and AIDS. At the time when they were planning, by the way, there were no antiretrovirals and drugs. People were just dying. They said, no, these fellows are going to die en masse. Eventually, we are going to be the majority. Control South Africa. It was one of the scenarios that were toyed with by the top echelons of the South African intelligence. By the way, in cabinet, as they were preparing to hand over power. But of course, they didn't foresee that science was going to make important discoveries, number one. Number two, they also didn't foresee that capitalism does not discriminate where money comes from. Even money from black people, capitalism accepts. That's how black people were saved. We've got 10 million people living with HIV and AIDS now in South Africa. If you didn't have drugs, let me tell you, black people were going to be wiped out. So, Cape independence. The second scenario was, let's demand a part of South Africa that we are going to control. Us, as white people. We can give them everything. If they just give us a part of South Africa that we are going to run and control, we'll be fine. And it will be ours. Called the Volksstaat in Afrikaans. And of course, they were not given that. But you know what? History being history, and this they didn't foresee. Fortunately, they got the Western Cape politically through votes. And now they control it. And they got it through the colored vote, by the way. And we can get into the dynamics about colored psychology and whites and the game in the Western Cape. But the point is, this is a beautiful part of South Africa. You can see black people have been governing this country and have ravaged it. Now we have this control of this thing. We must never lose it. But the next step is we must actually secede from the bigger thing. So we must have the powers to have our own police. There's a whole talk about devolving police powers, by the way. There's crime all over. It's under control. It's out of control in South Africa. We must just control our own police so that we police our place here, the Western Cape. We must run our own trains. The national government must not get involved. Everything that is about a state, we must get that. And then politically, those who are brave say, let us be independent from the rest. That's the game. And let me tell you, I've heard fellows saying we must move parliament from Cape Town to Gauteng. You make that mistake of moving parliament from Cape Town. Tell me what would link politically the Western Cape to South Africa and if it's controlled by a party that is confident, that is running things well down there, the rest is a mess. Because the designers of South Africa, by the way, and it was Jan Smuts, was very smart, Jan Smuts. He understood that this thing we are weaving together and we call South Africa actually is not one thing. It's many parts and many people who are different. So if we want to weave it together, let's have the capital city somewhere in Gauteng. So that's the north of the Vaal River. Let's have the capital city in the north, which is the former Transvaal. At the heart of this thing, which is the middle of the country, is the Free State. Let's have the judiciary as the headquarters. That's the thread. That's how South Africa was created. People have no idea how a country is created. The judiciary in Bloemfontein. There's nothing in Bloemfontein, by the way. I mean, there's nothing that justifies why you have the judiciary there. The reason was the headquarters in the north, the judiciary at the center of the thing, and parliament down in Cape Town. So that's how you weave it, and it becomes one country. And the harbor, the biggest harbor in terms of trade, Durban, so that you bring that part into this arrangement. That's how it was constructed. So the idiots who are calling for the parliament to be moved from Cape Town, they have no idea what they are doing. They are actually undoing South Africa. They are agents to undo South Africa. If you move parliament from Cape Town, tell me what is it that would link the rest of the country to that part of our country? The politicians will no longer go there to do what? They will be debating right here in Gauteng. So the Cape independence is about that. Is about the Volksstaat. This part of the country that can be controlled 150% by whites and is run along white lines by white people. Black people are not interfering. They can mess up the rest of their places, but not here in the Western Cape. It's extremely dangerous agenda. It must never be allowed. If you allow that, you don't know which other part of South Africa is going to call for that. And then the whole thing will disintegrate. South Africa is a complex country.
Should we be worried about Orania?
No, we shouldn't be worried. It's a small little thing. I mean, Orania is a small little thing. I mean, doesn't affect anything. Not worried about. I would be very worried if the Western Cape were to become an Orania. Strategic, significant. But what is Orania that you think we should be interested in? Some mad people who have decided to lock themselves up in this small thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so we shouldn't be worried about. And the ANC, by the way, when Orania came up, the Mandelas of our country at the time, they understood what I'm talking about. They said, let them have this Oranian nonsense of theirs. It's not going to move any needle.
But we shouldn't allow Cape independence.
We must never allow this Cape independence movement. It's extremely dangerous. It has the potential of balkanizing our state, our country. South Africa would be a thing of the past if we were to allow that, because it would trigger other parts of the country to follow that example. At the end of the day, the thing called South Africa would be no more. We would even have conflicts. We'll start fighting. So there is nothing wrong in the DA. Let me be clear. There's nothing wrong in the DA governing the Western Cape. If they govern it on the basis of a democratic vote, we must congratulate them. They have won. Just like there is nothing wrong with any party winning. If Umkhonto weSizwe were to win KZN on the basis of a democratic vote, we should congratulate them. Let me tell you, if you take away the democratic vote, South Africa collapses immediately. Look at Mozambique. Because the vote is no longer trusted in Mozambique. What is the alternative? It's chaos. So even as I say, we must never allow the Cape movement to get to a point where the Western Cape secedes. We must never interfere with the government of the DA if that government was won on the basis of the vote.
We also had a new regime coming in after 66 years. winning Botswana. Your opinions about the new advocate being the new president? By the way, congratulations to him.
Yeah, we must congratulate him. I mean, Botswana, they are the best example that Africans, one, can govern, two, they can be civilized, and they can be modern in outlook. Instead of us South Africans being the flag bearers of that kind of strategic message, this small little thing in our neighborhood has actually grabbed the trophy and are running with it. That you had a democratic election, the ruling party for many years was removed peacefully. The outgoing president congratulates the incoming president who's young. It's something to be commended. And we as Africans must be very proud of it. They are the best example. They are a small country, but the way they're governing their country, you can see that they're governing their country along modernistic lines. And we should be very proud. So any racist somewhere who thinks that Africans are by nature chaotic, they cannot govern themselves well, there is Botswana doing it. What are you going to say if you're a racist? You will have nothing to say. So we must congratulate the Botswana, but we must understand that there is a strategic significance in what they are doing. They are carrying our image as black people, that we are proper human beings.
Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe is a mess. There's no doubt about it. Zimbabwe is the opposite of Botswana.
Will it get any better?
No. Here is the thing. You see, ZANU-PF has criminalized Zimbabwean society. It has perverted it. Crime, corruption, chaos is now culture in Zimbabwe. And once something becomes culture, it is very difficult to change it. So the idea that if you want a document, a passport, for example, from a Zimbabwean government office, you will get it without paying a bribe. If you told Zimbabweans that, they would laugh at you and say you have smoked something. Because that's not how it works. In Zimbabwe, everything you pay a bribe. I mean, I have relatives in Zim, by the way. My nephews, my nieces are married to Zimbabweans and got family. I've been to Zim. I have a story of a family, an elderly family member who broke a leg and went to a public hospital somewhere in Bulawayo. The family had to bribe a doctor in order for this family member to be operated on. The doctors used to pass her for months, a broken leg. The doctors just didn't operate on her until a bribe was paid in hospital. Man, can you imagine that? That's Zimbabwe for you. To change that, my friend, you need decades of progressive authoritarianism. I don't know if you are going to get that. The second thing about why you can't change that Zimbabwe thing is the involvement and the enmeshment of the military in politics. You see, ZANU-PF and the military are the same thing. That's why even Mnangagwa could never have been president of Zimbabwe without a deal with the military. All right? So the head of the military, she went, had to engineer a coup to remove Mugabe. And they had a deal that you come in, I'm going to be your deputy. That's how it works. So when you have a military that is at the center of a country's politics, let me tell you, you can't change anything. Because they will simply blow up your head. And what are you going to do? If you make noise in Zim, they simply blow up your head. That's it. That's the end of it. So Zimbabwe is a hopeless case. That's why the cream of Zimbabwe, the intellectual cream of Zimbabwe, is out of that country. It's in South Africa, it's in the UK, some of them are in the US. And let me tell you, they will never go back.
Mr. Hopewell Shinono, my brother. Yo.
He's the only one who is making noise from there. He's the only one, and I follow him. He's the only one who's making noise from there.
I follow him too.
Yeah. It's and the stuff that he writes about, it's just out of this world. So
for the next couple of decades, we must just keep on expecting lots and lots of our Zimbabwean brothers and sisters flocking into South Africa.
There's no. Here's the thing about it. It's like Mozambicans. I remember in the 80s. I told you I come from Mpumalanga, around Bushbuck Ridge. We used to have Mozambicans flocking into South Africa through that corridor.
Yeah.
And in our villages, by the way, they used to be given land to settle there. And let me tell you, those people who flocked into South Africa in the 80s are now South Africa. All of them have IDs. There's no such a thing that people who, out of a conflict, they go to this part of the world and they settle there and they go back. No, they don't go back. They actually integrate with the society. I mean, the Zimbabweans in many ways have integrated with South African society. You may like it or you don't like it. They are going nowhere. Some of them may still visit this and that, but I can tell you, those who are settled in South Africa will live in South Africa. They will have children in South Africa. And those children will be South Africans, whether you like it or not. In any case, that's how South Africa, by the way, came about. Most people have no idea. South Africa came about through a process like that. I mean, people in the Northwest, what are they? They are South African. They are South Africans by citizenship because they've got IDs. But these people have relatives in Botswana. Historically, they've got a relationship with Botswana. People in Mpumalanga, right? The whole corridor of Mpumalanga from Komazi all the way to Bushbuck, by the way, not even Bushbuck Ridge, all the way to Limpopo, Punda Maria. Those people historically come from Mozambique, even though it was not even Mozambique, it was Lorenzo Marx. But they have never gone back and they will never go back. And there are many parts of South Africa, I can give you more examples of that. So they are not going back, yes. You must just live with the reality that these are our brothers and sisters. They are here to stay.
King Moswati is getting older and older. What is the future of that monarch over the next couple of decades? This is post his demise.
It will depend on his successor. Obviously, who's going to be one of his children. How strong will that successor be in suppressing aspirant democratic forces? So far, Moswati has been effective in undermining and suppressing democratic forces. Pudemo has been fighting and protest this and that, but has gone nowhere. So it will depend on the successor, number one. Number two, it will also depend on the regime in South Africa. Let me tell you, if one day you have a new government in South Africa that says we will depose that monarch, that can happen within seconds. I mean, there's absolutely nothing that Moswati can do to defend himself from South Africa. I mean, that is a landlocked country. It's a small little thing, by the way. It's not even bigger than Mpumalanga. It's smaller than Mpumalanga. I've been to Swaziland. You just drive from this part, before you realize you're on the other side of the border. So if you have a regime that says we want democracy in Swaziland and we're going to back up the democratic forces as a state, I can tell you that can be toppled. But nobody knows if that is going to happen. The ANC would have been that kind of government, but the ANC have been reluctant and they have actually not done anything about it. So I don't know what's going to happen in Swaziland, but it will depend on these two things. The successor, how strong the successor is, to the regime in South Africa.
And then our neighbors, Lesotho?
No, Lesotho is an irrelevant little thing, by the way, for us, except when it comes to, we have one interest in Lesotho, one biggest interest in Lesotho, and we're watching that, by the way, and this interest was created by the apartheid government. The ANC inherited it and they continue to watch it. Water. Most people have no idea, especially people in Gauteng, have no idea that without Lesotho, they would have no water. So, we are interested as a country in Lesotho mainly because of water. So for as long as they don't touch that asset, if they touch it, by the way, we will sort them out. They were sorted out. It was in 1997. I remember Buthelezi was acting president.
I remember
They
when
were
he was
sorted out.
president for a little
Yeah. Mandela and Becky strategically decided to go outside the country and made Buthelezi acting president, and they whispered in his ear, "Go sort out Lesotho."
You think they whispered in his ear?
Of course. I mean,
I thought it was him.
No. There is absolutely no way you can send soldiers. If you are acting president, there is absolutely no way you can send soldiers to go on a military operation outside South Africa without the president knowing wherever he is. Absolutely not. Yeah. Firstly, the president must know about it and he must approve of it. Then you can do it. There's no way Buthelezi would have sent the soldiers to Lesotho without Mandela okaying it. Mandela actually okayed it. He just didn't want to be seen to be the one doing it. So Buthelezi had to do the dirty work. But what I'm saying is this. Lesotho is an insignificant country. I mean, a population of about 2 million. It will continue to bumble along. They will have coup d'etats from time to time. They will kill their military generals. I mean, there's a military general who was a brother to a friend of mine, General Mahau, was murdered. They will continue to do that kind of stuff. For as long as they don't touch South Africa's water, they will be allowed to do that. But there is a thing, unfortunately. Other than water, Lesotho doesn't have strategic resources. As a result, it's not going to develop. It's going to be one of those poor little states in Africa that continue to exist.
Sure. Now we're getting into a new year. It's 2025. Before we get into a new year, you did touch on the EFF a bit and the MK. What do you think will be the outcome of the EFF's NPA? And let's also touch on what's happening this week with the Mkhonto weSizwe's first anniversary.
Well, both these things are very easy to predict. Are very easy. I know you can chop off my neck. I know Julius Malema is going to be the president of the EFF after this thing. That will not change. Number one. Number two, I know that anyone who's supported by Julius Malema for any position will win. There's no question about it. And on the second aspect, it's not me who's saying it. It's Julius himself. I watched his video. There was a gala dinner, must have been last year. He said this. He said in his life, he has never lost a contest for a position in a party. He said it. Number one. Number two, he said that anyone he has supported has never lost a contest for a position. So, there it is. Julius will be president. Whoever he supports for Secretary General, I don't know who that is, will be Secretary General. But this is what I know. The EFF has no future as a party. It's a declining party and it's going to move in reverse. Going to be part of our politics for a very long time until, and I've said this before, until Julius remains in parliament with one or two representatives. Like, more or less like Holomisa. Think of Holomisa. He has been in parliament for years. But when he started, had more members. Today, it's just two. It's him and Kwangu. So that's the direction in which the EFF is moving. Remember, they had hoped when they formed this project that as the ANC dies, they were going to inherit the assets of the ANC. And they were the second biggest at some point. They were the second biggest black political party. They are no longer. MK is now the second biggest black political party in South Africa. So forget the EFF. There's no future there. It's about Julius getting a salary from parliament and making occasional noises and you hosting him from time to time, maintaining his relevance. And nothing more than that. The Mkhonto weSizwe, as I said, look, let's acknowledge this. They have actually achieved a lot. In less than a year, they became the third largest party in South Africa through a democratic vote. That's huge. That's massive. My prediction is that if Zuma is still alive, the MK party is going to secure more than 30% of the vote in 2029. That's my prediction. Call me back if that doesn't happen. MK party will grow. It will collapse when Zuma is out. But for as long as he is alive and he can still stand behind a microphone and behind the camera and address rallies, the MK party will grow. So if you ask, who is inheriting the assets of the ANC? Currently, it is the MK taking. Those votes that are going to the MK used to be ANC votes. And that is what explains why the ANC has come down from 57% to 40%, is the MK. So there is an immediate future for the MK. There is no medium-term or long-term future for the MK party.
Last week or 2 weeks ago, Mr. Mbalula said, I think they're postponing it to next year, but a lot of people are anticipating the KZN PC to be disbanded. And there's lots of talks that they are also planning to disband Gauteng.
This is what I said before the elections. I said the ANC is finished, and I said the ANC was going to get 38%. That was my prediction, by the way. And I said after the elections, they will fight like we have never seen before. That's what I said. Here's a fight. It's a fight. Now they're busy pointing fingers at each other. This is not rebuilding or consolidating. It's literally dividing the ANC even further. Here is the thing. If Mbalula thinks that KZN should be disbanded because the leadership of the ANC in KZN has lost votes, why is the ANC at the national level, the leadership, why is not disbanded? Because the ANC at the national level, Cyril Ramaphosa, Fikile Mbalula and them, they have lost power. Just like Panyaza and them lost power in Gauteng. So if you are going to disband KZN, you're going to disband Gauteng, also disband the Tule House. You see what I mean? But this is part of this fight that I predicted, that they are going to fight like never before. But this fight, it's one directional to the grave. All of them. No one will win. All of them. They will fight into the grave. That's the fate of the ANC. The ANC has lost a sense of strategic perspective. It can no longer think. It's like a party that has gone mad. There are no strategic thinkers anymore in the ANC who take a back seat and reflect and say, where is our party today? What is happening internally? Where is it going tomorrow? Characters like Joel Neshitenze, by the way, used to be those types who would write strategy and tactics documents. If you look at them, they were not interested in serious positions in the party. These were thinkers who were looking at the horizon and say, what is coming our way strategically? And how can we dodge the bullet? And how can we sustain the party? Let me tell you, go and read any document that has been written by anybody in the ANC over the past 5 years. It's actually not even worth your time. One, it will be riddled with grammatical errors. It will be incoherent. The ANC mentally is dead. You can bring all of them, by the way, to me, all of them, from their president to me, and say, debate anything about South Africa or write a document about, I challenge them. Now I can beat them hands down. There is no thinker in the ANC. Dead.
And do you think it's that Ramaphosa, it's over?
Oh, no, it's over. Look, number one, Ramaphosa, as I said, is burying the ANC. He knows this is his last term. He's not coming back as president of South Africa after 2029. By the way, I don't think he will even reach 2029. That's another matter. His interests are to bury this thing peacefully, and he exits. He's not interested in any other thing about the ANC. That's what he's interested in. Bury this thing and exit peacefully.
And Phala won't follow him.
Look, Phala could follow him. It will depend on a few factors. Number one, it will depend on how he manages the relationship between the ANC and the DA. If, for example, the DA were to walk out of the so-called government of national unity, let me tell you, Phala would remove Ramaphosa. They would never defend Ramaphosa. They would go to parliament and vote with whoever wants to. Remember, MK wants Ramaphosa, the MK party wants Ramaphosa out as in yesterday. The EFF wants Ramaphosa out as in yesterday. There is a big component in the ANC itself that wants Ramaphosa out as in yesterday. So if you were to have the government of national unity unraveling, Ramaphosa would be gone within a week. And he knows it. That's why he is trying very gingerly to nurse this thing. It's a rickety arrangement, but he's trying very hard to nurse it. If the DA were to walk out of that government of national, it would be the end of Cyril Ramaphosa. So he will try his best to get as close to the end as possible. But he actually knows it, that he may not reach the end. In any case, two of his predecessors didn't reach the end. Thabo Mbeki didn't reach the end. Zuma didn't reach the end. Who is he to reach the end? By the way, Ramaphosa is the weakest of ANC presidents, by the way. It's weaker than Zuma. Zuma, when he was in charge of the ANC, he controlled it. He controlled the levers of power in the ANC. And everyone knew that Ubaba was in charge. Cyril Ramaphosa is very weak. He is there because, the factions know that if you remove him, maybe this thing is going to fall apart very quickly. So let's just have him. But he's very weak. He controls nothing in the ANC.
Comrade Paul Mashatile, Deputy President?
I don't see him into the future of the ANC. You know who I see? It's Panyaza. Yeah, Panyaza is positioning himself for a fight with Ramaphosa. These T-shirts that they are printing, "Don't kill Chris Hani again." So Zizi Kodwa wearing it also. Remember, Zizi Kodwa was kicked out of cabinet by Ramaphosa.
Yeah.
That is the new thing that they are cooking to remove Ramaphosa with. Paul might not get it. I think Panyaza is more ambitious, and he thinks that he can mount a campaign to topple Ramaphosa, and that he could be president of the ANC, representing the so-called new generation in the party. He may not succeed, but I think that's the thing to be watched, not Paul.
Comrade Fikile Mbalula, SG?
I also don't think that is the future. Is the future of the ANC. He has offended a lot of people during his tenure as the SG. So offended the Tripartite Alliance, COSATU, the SACP, the Radical Economic Transformation Faction. He cannot mobilize enough support for him to become president of the ANC. So I actually see him out of the leadership of the ANC at the next conference. He has offended a lot of people.
As you're talking about the ANC being in its funeral, being buried by President Ramaphosa, we heard statements a couple of weeks ago that Solima Paila saying the SACP is going to, is it the SACP?
Yeah, it is the SACP. It's going to contest elections.
Yeah, on their own.
He's dreaming. I don't know what he sees in his dreams. I mean, he's seeing very funny things. They can contest elections.
Mr. Mashele.
And in fact, I'm surprised that he can be so naive, because he's got examples in front of him. Remember, NUMSA contested elections, right? It formed some party. I can't even remember its name, right? It didn't get anything. The SACP, it's a relic of the past. There is no serious communist party in the world that continues to sing from Lenin and Marx scripts the way the South African Communist Party is singing. That is significant anywhere in the world. The Communist Party of China has long shifted from that script. In any case, by the way, the Communist Party of China even refused to be controlled by the Soviet Union, which is the force that controlled the South African Communist Party for the longest time. So he sits somewhere here in Johannesburg. He thinks that the Communist Party is a big thing. South Africans will vote for it. He will be shocked if he contested for election. He will get absolutely nothing. He will get a drubbing. So let him contest. You will call me back. I'll say, look at Soli. Yeah. They have no support. South Africans have no idea what the South African Communist Party is about. They have absolutely no idea. By the way, Berlin Wall fell in 1989. The Soviet Union collapsed. This thing about communism, South Africans don't believe in this communist stuff. They believe in a capitalist system, free enterprise. It may be a mixed economy, but they don't believe in this. It's Soli and a few of his friends who are having a good drink and they think South Africans are thinking about communism. They won't get. So let them contest if they want to, but I can tell you, they will be embarrassed if they do so.
As we are nearing towards the last part of our conversation, a very dangerous one. Let's get into a discussion of this one. And you and its federal leader predicted what's going on in the country right now. You predicted over 10 years ago what's going on in the country now. Now, there's been videos surfacing of Ugogo Helen Zille predicting what's going on in the country right now. Let's talk about the DA and the future of the DA. And what do you think they are planning? And with all of these collapses and what we're talking about, what do you think long-term the DA is planning and what's going to happen according to your predictions?
The game of the DA, as I see it, and by the way, give them credit. They are good strategists. They are very, very good. Helen, with all her weaknesses, she is a clear-eyed political strategist. Now, what the DA wants is to take back power.
By any means necessary.
From black people. That's what the DA is about. Remember, the DA was formed by white parties. There was no black party when the DA was formed. So let's just go back to the beginning. Why did they form the DA? They formed the DA, Tony Leon told us later, to fight back. There was even a campaign, first campaign of the day, fight back. Fighting back. Who are you fighting back? Black people. They were now in charge. So, the long game is, let black people govern enough for those who vote for them to see that they can't govern. They will collapse things to the point that their own people will see that these people can't govern. And they will turn towards us, the whites, and will get back power in South Africa. And we are going to confuse them, the blacks, by having a sprinkle of blacks in our ranks. But we are going to select these blacks in our ranks very carefully. We will decide who comes into our party to occupy which position. When these blacks are in our party and they deviate from our script, we will boot them out of our party. That's the game. The first step is to consolidate power in the Western Cape and govern the Western Cape well, such that everyone can see that the Western Cape is the shining example of good governance.
For white people. Because
for white people.
Has good there.
Yeah. It's for white people. No, it's not for blacks. Remember, let's be honest about it. Historically, let me put it this way. And I dare anyone to challenge me on this one. I've studied history and world history. There is no group of human beings in the world that works for the empowerment and the development of another. Full stop. Did you hear me? There is no group of human beings in the world that works for the empowerment and the development of another. Full stop. If you don't understand that, you will be naive to think that whites are going to work very hard. They're going to sweat in order for black people to develop. It's not going to happen. White people are normal. The Chinese will never work hard for the development of Indians. And this, by the way, doesn't apply only to the Chinese, doesn't apply only to the whites. It also applies to blacks. If you look at our history as black people, and that's what makes it complicated for black people to unite in South Africa. Why? Because we actually belong to different tribal groups. So the idea that vendors will work very hard to develop and empower Zulus, it's madness. It has never happened in history. Or that Tswanas are going to work very hard to develop and empower Shangans. It doesn't work that way in history. So keep that in mind. So the DA is nursing a project to protect and advance the interests of its constituents, white people. And there's nothing abnormal, as I said. That's how human beings operate all over the world. So the question is, will they eventually take over South Africa? I doubt it. I doubt it. The Western Cape, I think they will hold on to it for the longest time. I don't see another party disturbing the DA in the Western Cape. Especially because there is a dynamic about the colored population in the Western Cape. Remember, Helen Zille once told us about refugees coming from the Eastern Cape. And obviously, she was criticized. And the people who criticize her the most are actually the black intelligentsia, the black middle class in Gauteng. Who says, Helen, what are you saying? When she told us about refugees. But Helen was smart. She knew what she was doing when she talked about this refugee thing in the Western Cape. She was communicating a message to coloreds in the Western Cape that black people, having collapsed their province, the Western Cape, are now flocking to your province in the Western Cape. And they are coming to threaten your interests. Beware. What was the point? The point was for the colored population in the Western Cape to look at the Africans from the Eastern Cape as a threat and partner with whites in order to protect their interests. That's how white people gain power in the Western Cape. Without the colored vote, there is no way the DA can win elections in the Western Cape because the coloreds are the majority in that province. So that's the game that is being played by the DA. I can tell you, no one is going to tell you the way I'm telling you. People are going to hide the news, all sorts of euphemism. But that is the hardcore strategic game the DA is playing.
Yeah, what an interesting conversation. And then lastly for me, Mr. Mashele, where are we in all of this? The voters, especially us, the majority, the black people, or the Rainbow Nation, just the citizens that want to see this country get better and go forward, and that are not fixated about positions, etc. We just want things to work.
Look, to be honest, if I feel pained by the fate of black people in South Africa. Having destroyed their schools in the rural areas, the ANC, having destroyed their schools in the urban areas, the townships, what is it that can turn around their lot? Having failed to build factories that manufacture stuff that can employ millions of blacks, what is it that can turn around their lot? You see, I'm not some elitist who is living in the suburbs manufacturing theories. I actually have a house in a township called Mukuhlu. I'm actually going there next week. I go there twice maybe per month. Home. Right? I walk in the streets of black communities. This is what I see. I see hopelessness deepening in our black communities. The level of alcoholism on the part of black youth breaks my heart. There is no hope. Black youth who are above 18 are out of school and out of work. Millions of them. There are no new factories that are being built. close to their townships, and there will never be new factories that are being built. You see, there's something that is going on, and you've got to understand this stuff. If you drive from OR Airport on R21, those who know Gauteng will understand what I'm talking about. And you go to Pretoria, what do you see on both sides of R21? You see massive structures, warehouses. That's what you see. You know, people have no idea. They can't make sense of what they see. You know what those warehouses represent? Loss of jobs in South Africa. These are goods from outside. They fly into South Africa. They are warehoused there, and they get into our supply chain systems, which means we are no longer manufacturing. That's what those warehouses in Kempton Park
those
mean.
Beautiful big warehouses.
When each time I drive past those structures, my heart sinks because I understand what they mean. They mean South Africans will no longer be employed. Black South Africans will no longer be employed. So this takes us back to the sins committed by the ANC. So China is manufacturing, creating employment in its own neighborhood, shipping off the products to Kempton Park. And before you realize, you buy them from Pick and Pay. Before you realize, you buy them as gadgets. Here is a task I want to give South Africans. Just take your shirt from your wardrobe and turn and look at the label here. And the spoon you're using in your kitchen. You will be shocked how many items are made in China in your kitchen. You know what that means? South Africans will no longer be employed. So I feel very worried about the future of black people. You see, the Asians think strategically. They have turned around their countries smartly. By the way, they have overtaken the West in the top 5 economies of the world. Number 1 is the US. Number 2 is China. Japan must be number 3, right? India is there, it's up there, right? In the top 5, these used to be the US, Germany, it used to be Western countries. Now it's Asian countries. They're creating jobs in their own countries. We here in Africa are obsessed with nonsensical politics that builds no factory, that employs no one. That is our fate as black people, unfortunately.
What would it take? What type of miracle would it take?
It will take a visionary leadership. Let me explain this. There's a country called Singapore. There's a chap called Lee Kuan Yew. He goes to study in the UK, Cambridge. He knows that his people, they were still under colonialism, by the way. So we are not the only ones who were colonized. He comes back with education. He says, my people are backward. That's number 1, by the way. We must acknowledge that our people are backward. If you said black people are backward in South Africa, you're going to be lynched. But that's how Deng Xiaoping, the guy who turned around China, that was his starting point, that our people are backward. When you say our people, that's what the Meiji dynasty in Japan said. Our people are backward. Then the question is, what do we do? So Lee Kuan Yew says, I want to build a country from scratch that is industrialized. This population is educated. And the population is civilized. He even passed the law because these people, they were so backward, these people, that they went around spitting saliva everywhere in public. He passed a law. If you spit, you get arrested. You go spend time in a few months in jail. They were arrested. They stopped spitting. So you need a leadership that is going to say, this is what I want to do. I want to see black people like South Koreans as developed, industrialized, highly educated. They can compete. They will produce. I mean, today in our pockets, I have a Samsung in my pocket. Why can't we produce our own Samsung here in South Africa? South Korea, that produces Samsung and Hyundai and Kia, right? It's a small little country, man, full of mountains. Over 60% of its land is mountainous. I've been there. But man, they sell us cell phones. They sell us cars. We must get into that strategic game. That is the future. It's economics. If we don't attend to that, let me tell you, we'll remain backward until the Lord returns. You see, there's a guy in Africa. We must give him credit. Although he's a dictator, but we must give him credit. Kagame in Rwanda. He has understood what I'm talking about. He's busy turning around his country because he has understood what I'm talking about. So these chaps in the ANC, people like Cyril Ramaphosa, have no idea. We are on autopilot. They are just worried about their own squabbles. They are not worried about the fate of their own people.
Thank you very much. It's been an interesting 2025, Mr. Mashele. Your last words?
My last word is that South Africans must take matters into their own hands. Not to create chaos, but to do things that will develop them and their own country. This idea that some people will come from Lutula House or from, they call it Winnie Madikizela Mandela House, to come and solve your problems, it's not going to happen. You will wait until you die. So take matters into your own hands and improve your lot.
I'll see you in 2025.
All the best.
Plans for the holiday season?
I'm going...
Children, family?
I'm going home. Going to Bushbuck Ridge to relax with my folks down there.
Nice.
And there will be a bit of Kruger National Park. We are blessed. We've got the park very close to my house.
Right next door.
Right next door. And relax with family and my kids. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the rest.
Guys, have a great festive season. Drive safely on the roads. Have fun, man. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your festivities while you're out there. And don't forget to not overspend. I know Pep is just waiting for those back to school adverts. As soon as after Christmas, got 26, back to school. So think about that. School fees next year. And let January not be the normal January that you've experienced all the other past years, because we overspend in the festive season and just hardly 2-3 weeks later, get January ra complain. So please don't be suffer of sbawelling. It's okay. Watch that Instagram, watch that social media, let them do their thing. Sometimes it's just okay to just have fun with your family in the house. You don't have to overspend your money. Look after yourselves. We'll see you guys very soon. Danko.